Here we have the all-important first home visit case note. This note will usually be a bit longer than average, as you're trying to capture quite a lot in one note. I'm doing it here as a case note, as an example, just to show you the content. Some departments have separate forms for home visits. Obviously, I can't replicate those since they're all going to be a bit different. Some of them have templates with lots of boxes in them, asking different things. I'm not a fan of those for reasons that I'll talk about some other time. But if that's the sort of record that you're currently working with, then you'll have to have a think about how to fit this information into each of those boxes. Now, what I'm showing you here is based quite loosely on the liquid logic type case note, since it's what most departments use. I'm not including the who was spoken to, did you see the child's bedroom boxes or the drop downs or any of that, because frankly that should have been covered in your induction at work. If you're having trouble with that part, ask your colleagues or manager to show you. So I'm going to start with the reason for contact box. Sometimes it might be called purpose of contact, purpose of visit, or similar. But what I want you to do is to start thinking of it more as summary of case note. Write it when you've finished writing the rest of the case note, if that helps you decide what to include. The reason for this is that that box is what becomes visible on the list of case notes screen. Have you ever been writing an assessment and you know you had a conversation about something, but you just can't remember when it was or what was said? Then you go into the case note screen to find it, where you're met with a list, and all that's in the column that helps you identify that case note from any other, you've just got one after the other: home visit, home visit, home visit, home visit, home visit, attempted home visit, phone call, attempted phone call, unsuccessful phone call, no answer. And there's no way of knowing which is the ones that you're going to want to have a look at. If you had a brief summary instead, that's going to save you time and possibly your sanity. You can easily see in the reason for box here, Suzy has included that it was the initial home visit, why she was undertaking the visit, who was present, and yeah, I know that's tickable in the other boxes, but this is about good writing habits, and the topics discussed. Keep the reason for box to under 30 words because on the big screen of case notes, you don't want it to take up too much real estate. Right, let's move on to the main case note. Letter to the children. So as this is the first home visit, Suzy is including a brief letter to the children right at the start. You won't have to do this every single visit. You want these letters to be meaningful. I've seen letters to children which are basically kind of fill in the blanks. You know, dear child, you are a ... year old boy/girl. Your favourite colour is ... You like dinosaurs / unicorns / football / makeup / other, delete as appropriate, and so on. You know, those are horrible to read and don't show any warmth or knowledge of the child as a person. It limits the child's identity to very basic facts about them instead of their personality or complexity in other forms. Less frequent but more meaningful letters are much better than routine formulaic ones. Early in your work with a family, you should include more letters because you're explaining what you're doing. But once you get to a point where visits are routine, you can ease up a bit and maybe write something every second or third visit. But anytime there's a significant development on the case, you should always include a few words to the child explaining what this means and where they are in all the drama that might be going on. Introduction. Here's Suzy's recording that she spoke about what role a social worker has and demonstrates that she's thinking about how Lucy might be feeling in this situation. So she's showing empathy, in other words. This is all summarised, even though in my experience this sort of discussion can take 20 or 30 minutes. The exact details of this don't have to be recorded unless Lucy asked a question or said something that Suzy thought warranted recording. You'll see that Suzy uses quote marks as often as possible to show what she's writing is based directly on what Lucy told her. She isn't recording Lucy word for word, but summarising what Lucy said with quotes. The quotes tie the summary directly to Lucy, rather than it being just what Suzy interpreted. You'll see that this is used throughout the case notes and other documents that Suzy writes. It is one of the most important techniques for good writing in children's social work. It attributes the sentiment of your recording to the person. By using their actual words, you're evidencing that that's what they meant. And it shows that you were listening to them when they were talking to you. However, you need to be very careful that you're taking their words in the right context to convey their meaning. If someone was clearly joking, don't use those words to make them sound like they were serious. If someone might have been joking but you're not sure, then you can say, Mr. Smith said XYZ. He might have been joking, but I'm not sure. Background to the incident. It's pretty rare that an incident will happen completely out of the blue, so it's important to look at what was happening in the lead up and record that discussion. Again, you'll see the use of quotes, but also clear attribution as to who said what. Specifically, Lucy is telling Suzy what Michael said to her. Suzy also records where she challenged Lucy, which prompted further thought from Lucy. Identifying challenge in your recording like this, rather than simply the outcome of that challenge, is an example of demonstrating your good social work practice. In my first episode, I spoke about good practice not being visible on files, even though it is happening in the real world. This is how you make it visible on your files. You don't need to go into a huge amount of detail, but just recording that it happened, the context and the outcome shows that you are an active part of the discussion and using your professional skills to good effect. Lucy's account of the incident. Again, you'll see there are a lot of quotes, both from Lucy and what Lucy reported Mike said. It's clear from both the context and the subheading that this is all Lucy's account. If you later take this information and use it in an assessment, it's important that you maintain that context. Lucy told me that Mike said, whatever. This is attributing the source of the information. If we believe Lucy, and I think it's fair to do so at this point, we're still only getting the information from her. Mike may confirm that he did those things, in which case we can treat it as an objective fact. If he denies it, then we're going to need to undertake some analysis and provide evidence as to why we think that Lucy's account is more reliable. Or it may be that when we speak to Mike, he's got some evidence that makes his account more reliable. At any rate, for now, we're still gathering the information and being very clear where we got it from. You can also see that Suzy again recorded her good practice where she asked a follow-up question and made a discretionary decision to let it go for now, just to keep the conversation going. Lucy's account continues. You'll note that the account is in chronological order. My experience is that this rarely happens in real-life discussions, especially when recalling a very emotional situation for the first time. Usually the person forgets bits and goes back to add in details, or the social worker has to ask clarifying questions. Don't worry about that in your recording. You have a degree of editorial discretion where it doesn't change the meaning or context of what's being said. Now, if you get the impression that someone's lying, then record that you have that impression and try to give some examples of why you think that. But if someone's just having some difficulty remembering a traumatic event, well, that's normal, and we don't have to record every time it took them a minute to recall things. If you want, you can put in a sentence like, Lucy found it challenging to remember all the details and we went back and forth several times to fill bits in. You'll again see that Suzy recorded where she challenged Lucy, including specific questions she asked, especially around safety. Again, she's recording good practice there. A basic safety plan is important in a situation like this. I'm going to talk about the safety plan when I reach the full version that Suzy recorded separately, but for now I'll just point out that Suzy has addressed this plan to Lucy and has thought about the state of mind that Lucy might be in when things are kicking off and she needs the plan. So she's showing some empathy there as well. Meeting Johnny and Tara. Here the children don't say much, but Suzy has described their body language instead to give the children their voice. Since the children didn't say much, she's actually able to record their responses completely, including the child language that Tara uses as a 2-year-old. In terms of recording her good practice, she's recorded that she spoke to the children about who a social worker is and what they do, with a little more detail than she did with Lucy. Suzy also records her thoughts about why she didn't do more specific work with the children at this point. Normally in real life, on your first visit after a situation like this, you would probably try to get a bit more information out of the children and get them to speak to you, but I'm planning on having a direct work episode later on, so I'll save that for then. Children's development. This is very basic, but at this point, basic is good enough. Suzy can go into more detail later on. So she's written enough here to show that she had a conversation with Lucy about the children and took out the important information from that conversation. There's enough here that she can fill out a brief pen picture of the children in her case summary, and she can use the information about the children's interests when she's choosing direct work tools to use with them next time. She can follow up with the school and Lucy later on about Johnny possibly being on the spectrum, and she can also see from what Lucy said that he's not being disadvantaged by not having a diagnosis, at least at this point. Observations of the house. So as Suzy writes about what she sees in the house, she uses a mixture of her personal and professional opinions and her actual observations. So when she uses a word like clean to describe the children's bedroom, she doesn't just say that the bedroom's clean. She goes on to tell you that the sheets had been washed recently, that the clothes were folded away properly in the drawers. So she's painting a bit of a picture there rather than just assuming that what she thinks of as being clean is going to be the same for other people as well. And again with the kitchen, she doesn't just say there was sufficient food in the kitchen. She gives examples, cereal and fruit and dry food in the cupboards. She also talks about how the sink cupboard has a lock on it, which is where you'd normally have detergents and other chemicals that you don't want kids to get their hands on. She again challenges why there were 2 cans of beer in the fridge. The fact that she observed that and she asked Lucy about it, again, that's good practice that she's recording and making visible on the file. When she discusses the damage that she sees to the parents' bedroom door and the stains on the sofa and the ceiling, she's recognising that those are likely from the incident of domestic abuse, but she's also open to the possibility it could be something else. After all, you've got a bunch of little kids in there and damage can happen. But she's also confirming what Tara told her when she came out and pointed and said, "Daddy naughty." Lucy's also confirming that damage was caused by Mike on that occasion. Suzy's offer to contact the housing department is non-committal, so she's not making a promise. But if she's successful in doing that, it could help her build the relationship with Lucy. Analysis. Okay, I'm going to be doing a series on analysis in the future because it's probably the single main thing I get asked to help social workers with. For now, though, I'll briefly talk you through what Suzy's written here. First, she considers Lucy's account and compares it with the information she gets from other sources. So that's what Tara says, what the police said, etc. And she's identifying that they are consistent with each other, which provides veracity to Lucy's account. Second, she considers Tara's words against what Lucy said about the children not being aware of what was going on, and comes to the conclusion that, well, maybe they know a bit more than their mum thinks. Third, her thoughts on Mike, his attitude and behaviour, and that she caught what Lucy said about something happening in Mike's childhood that she will probably follow up on. Fourth, her thoughts on Lucy, her attitude and behaviour. She speculates slightly about what might be the cause of this, something she can look into a bit later on as well. Fifth, thinking about both parents' attitudes and behaviours in the context of what Suzy knows about their relationship at this point and what this might mean in terms of risk. And finally, identifying that Johnny's learning needs require follow-up, but right now there's more pressing priorities. So with this analysis, Suzy has drawn greater meaning from her visit than the raw facts would give by themselves. She started to create a picture of the family's dynamics, looking at how and why they ended up in this situation. She identified 4 parts, which she'll follow up on: how much the children know, Mike's background, Lucy's background, and Johnny's learning needs. Next steps. These are taken from the outcome of the home visit. At this point in time, Suzy is still trying to get her head around the case, so much of it is about building her own understanding. All in all, they're pretty self-explanatory, but you can see that they are all actions for Suzy to do. She's the one who will have access to the case note, not Lucy. So if Lucy will have to undertake a next step, it's really not appropriate, at least in my view, to include that here. Suzy could put something in to remind her to check that Lucy's done it, or to send Lucy a reminder text. Right, that's the first case note done. Thanks for sticking with me through it. I know it took a while.